Sometimes the prize is not worth the costs. The means by which we achieve victory are as important as the victory itself. Brandon Sanderson. The Dragon Pod, From Bending Not Breaking. Book 5, Ocean. Chapter 5, Archmage Akiyu. It's that time again, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the Dragon Pod. We got an incredible episode ahead, talking about episode 5. This is the midpoint of the season. This is big. This is like a lot's going on here. We got a lot going down, and who better than to have join us for such a pivotal episode where things start to shift than our friend Jesse Inocalla. That's right, folks. He uses he, his pronouns, and he is back and back on the pod, has been putting a lot of fun work out left and right. One of the more recent voices I've had the pleasure of experiencing personally is his rendition of voicing the Brain on the new TV series, My Adventures with Superman. Even so, many of you will know and love Jesse for his exceptional talent as the voice of Soren in The Dragon Prince. And we are thrilled, of course, to have you back, Jesse. Welcome. How are you?
Thank you. Thank you so much, Ben. Thanks for having me. I'm good. I'm good, man. It's been hot labor summer, so we've been coming back off of that. Congrats to the WGA on their truly historic
That's right.
agreement. It's astounding. It's like the studios just took 4 months to be like, hey, we'll just give you everything you want and then more because you've absolutely drubbed us, which is delightful. Yeah, I've been good otherwise. It's been a lot of, working, teaching, and living life, doing my best to, at least.
We love living life.
We try to, at least. Yeah.
Yeah, I guess we hope we love living life. What's your favorite thing to teach? I've seen you do several different, there are several titles for the types of classes you teach. What's your favorite thing to do with a
Oh
group?
boy. That's a great question. I teach a lot of acting right now. I have also been back in the practice of teaching Filipino martial arts, which has been lovely.
Cool.
I used to, a number of years ago, teach capoeira as well. That has fallen off a little bit as I've been navigating the capoeira world a little more. But I would say one of my favorite things to teach genuinely is Filipino martial arts. And one of the reasons why is a lot of people like me who, are Filipino and don't have a whole lot of connection
Yeah.
to their home culture will find connection where they can. And
Mhm.
for me, a big part of it was connecting into my FMA roots, not Full Metal Alchemist for the
I was about to
listener. The
say.
amount of times I get that, it's wonderful. No, like Filipino martial arts roots, that becomes a real touchstone for people getting back in touch with their culture, and I'm working with a group right now that is all, Filipino youth that are looking to reconnect. And it's been really lovely to work with them to try and bridge that gap.
Awesome. Wow. So, pardon my ignorance, but
Please.
what makes Filipino martial arts different from just like other versions of martial arts? Like, what is unique about it, perhaps?
There, first off, there's a lot of them. The style I teach is called modern arnis. It's the way I've had it described to me, and the way that I kind of like to describe it, is the gentleman who founded the art spent a lot of time studying a whole lot of different styles, because there's, you know a different style of martial art for every major island, and then
Yeah.
subgroups for all the little islands. And he sought to not only simplify but streamline.
Mm.
So he took what he found worked from different FMA practices throughout the Philippines and distilled them into his art. which
Got
is
it.
modern Arnis. So it's markedly efficient. I like to say that, we want to end a fight quick so we can get home and eat. It is a lot of our work too, because we're a very weapons heavy style that is in
Cool.
knife, in stick primarily, but the stick derives from sword,
Mm,
because while we were colonized by the Spanish, they wouldn't let us carry swords because we kept cutting their damn heads off.
that makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, it's a lot of, weirdly, it's a lot of the same sort of background that capoeira has in hiding its roots from colonizers, which I
Yeah.
think is very interesting, and it
That's
resonates with me very deep.
yeah, and I think that's a really important source of resistance, right? To
Hmm.
cultivate this what may be a lost art to many people, and you're
Hmm.
living that and reliving into what it means and where it comes from. And yeah, I guess it just keeps the idea of resistance present on the mind, right?
For
Even
sure.
in modern day. Yeah,
Well,
that's
and
so
it's something too that I think is really interesting about the art, that in the Philippines, a lot of people are taught arnis in schools because, of course,
cool.
they are. It's part of the physical education program. But much like a lot of, academic study, school study, they're not taught the roots of it.
Yeah.
They're just taught the motions, right?
Mhm.
And I think the roots of it are so interesting and so fascinating to follow through on, because there is this grand history of resistance and this grand history of rebellion and this history of freedom, seeking freedom,
Yeah.
that exists within FMA, that exists within truly not all that many martial arts. Like, there are a few, but a lot of martial arts stems from meditative practice or, martial practice. But there are a handful that I really truly love that are rooted in resistance.
Hmm.
And I
Yeah.
think those are the most interesting.
Well, that's awesome. And I just, yeah, I like y'all. This is a great opportunity for you to connect with Jesse, like learn more. That's what a cool experience. Um, Amazing. So you've been balancing teaching these classes,
Hmm.
you've been doing a lot of that, you've been doing voice acting, of course.
Hmm.
Um, Tell me about it's been a while since we've talked. It's been a while,
Yes, it has.
but how has your relationship with kind of the Dragon Prince shifted, if at all,
Oh
um,
man.
over the past, however long it's been?
It's funny you say that, because this year, 2023, marked the fifth anniversary of the show dropping.
Oh, I saw, was it Vilas who made a post about that? I
Vilas
think.
made a post about that. I realized then that it was 5 years, and I was like, oh shit, 5 years. God damn.
Yeah.
And, it's been 5 years since the show dropped, but it's been effectively, you know, seven, you
Yeah.
know, coming close to a decade that I've been living with Soren, with the show, with, the friends and family that I've built out
Yeah.
of the show. And it's really humbling, man. Like,
Mm.
I I'm so thankful to everyone at Wonderstorm for the opportunity. I'm so thankful to, my agents, my castmates, my everybody who pushes me to keep doing what I do. Not that there's ever any resistance to doing what I do, but there are dark days, as there always are. And I am just, it really took me by surprise that this is the 5 year. It really snuck up on me, and I was just like, shit, wow, here we are, 5 years of the Dragon Prince,
Yeah.
5 years of the community, the fandom, the amazing creativity and generosity from everybody surrounding the show and
Mhm.
within the show as well. And it's funny too, because like with season 5, I feel like I said this last time I was here, but with season 5, we are getting started. Like,
Yikes.
truly, it's happening.
Uh-huh. Yeah. There's a lot of times where I like as I rewatch this season, I'm my brain has intrusive thoughts around what's going to happen later.
I can
All,
imagine.
all of a sudden, I'm like, oh my God, this person's gonna die. And it comes out of nowhere. And I'm wondering what instinctual knowledge is leading me to that. But I digress. Like, who knows what's happened here?
I mean,
Um,
I will say the writers, Aaron, Justin, Devin, Paige Van Tassel wrote on these, Joe Corcoran, Eugene Ramos,
yeah,
Ian, of course, Ian Hendry. They're so fucking smart. They're so good.
yeah.
Like, genuinely, as I was reading, because pardon me, I get scripts, a couple days in advance sometimes. And as I would read the scripts, and this is no surprise, I will text Rack or Jason or whomever and be like, "Oh my God, can you believe this? Can you believe this?" And there were so many of those moments reading through seasons 5 through 7
Ugh,
where I was just like, "Whoa, holy
yeah,
shit."
yeah.
Even Aaron, I would text Aaron and be like, "Aaron, what are we? This is insane."
What are we doing? We have the power to change this. Amazing. Yeah, no, I think that's just so incredible. I just to think about how, you know, I've talked about this before on the podcast, but thinking about how these characters become our friends, right? It's a parasocial relationship, right? But it's one-sided theoretically. And it's a relationship still, right? Where we are affected by what happens to these people. And um it's just interesting when you spend, especially in the nature of the podcast and the nature of actually voicing the character, it becomes a point where it's like you spend 7 years with this person. You spend for me, 5 years watching and rewatching and building a relationship with these people. And then when things happen, it's like, wow, that physically hit me in the gut when X, Y, or Z happens. So
Yeah. Well,
real.
it's funny because I think about Jack
Hmm.
and how Jack has had a relationship with Sokka for most of his life at this point.
Yeah.
Like, that's wild to me.
18 years. Yeah.
Yeah, that's wild. You know, um, uh, Jesse Flowers, Toph,
Yep.
she's been Toph longer than she's been Jesse Flowers.
It's true. Yeah.
With love and respect to her, of course. Um, I recognize that, these characters really resonate with a lot of people, and I want people to understand too, they resonate with us just as much, probably
Yeah.
probably more, you know? Like,
Hmm.
I have lived with Soren for 7 years, and I will likely live with him till I die because the show has been a huge part of my life,
Yeah.
continues to be a huge part of my life. And the writing, the freedoms, the character building that have been afforded by the Wonderstorm team to all of us actors has been unprecedented,
Mm.
truly unprecedented. I think Jason Jason says it best in that, this is an incredibly special show because it's been wildly collaborative.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that makes so much sense. It makes sense that it would be special because when people work together, who'd have thought, right?
Who'd have guessed? Who would
Right.
have guessed?
Yeah. Who knows? Oh man. And this is just such a good insight too. And you're already such a great guest just in terms of we've already talked on so many things that are the primal source. And this is like the segment, and like you've given us so much already around what that's like. I'm curious if we narrow the focus down to this episode,
Yes, let's.
if there's anything interesting about the making of or the behind the scenes that happened in this particular
Oh,
episode.
wow. So from what I remember, and bear with me as my memory is not always great.
No worries.
Uh, this episode was still recorded when we were all recording separately.
Hmm.
So I remember going in. I don't think I had met Ben yet, but Ben Callens, of course. Um, I was just endlessly curious about everyone else's performances.
Mm.
And I was so charmed by the friendship that seems to be happening between Zubeya and Soren.
Right? That was
It's
it kind
very
of took me by
sweet.
surprise a little bit. Yeah.
Yeah, took me a little by surprise, but I'm here for it. I love it. I think it's very cute. Um, yeah, I just actually I do remember one thing. I feel like, and this could be a phantom memory, the animatic I feel that I saw from this episode before anything was all of them walking in their dumb shells.
Yep. Yep.
And I just remember thinking, this is a very, very funny thing. I hope it stays this funny. And I mean, it does, but boy, stuff happens.
It
Stuff
always
happens.
things hit different when you see it out of context, and when
Things
like
hit way
now
different.
it's like all
Yeah.
of a sudden you're like, what is gonna
What?
how do
The
we get
skews.
how do we
Yeah.
get from like from here to there?
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
No, that makes a lot of sense. Amazing. So, okay. Um, you've been so gracious with all this. It's incredible. I want to we have talked about how we're going to watch and discuss this episode.
Yes.
And in preparation, we were like, what is the lens that we're going to pay attention to here? And threw it to you, and you came back with sacrifice as
I
the lens.
did. Sacrifice.
And I'm curious why. Like led you to that as your thought process.
Yeah. I mean, so much of the show in general is about sacrifice, you know, uh, uh, a mother's sacrifice to rescue her kid and his friend, Zubeya, of course. Um, Rayla nearly sacrificing her hand in
Yeah.
the first three seasons, because she feels it's the right thing to do. Um, in this episode, we have a lot of smaller moments of sacrifice, but we also learn some incredibly big moments of sacrifice
Yeah.
that have happened to set the stage for where things are at.
Hmm.
Be that with Kim Dale, be that with Akiyu herself, be that with Zubeya
Yeah.
doing what I think every mother in the world would do
Yeah.
and hide their injury,
Hmm.
you know? And I think that sacrifice is a big theme of the
Yeah.
show in general.
Yeah.
Sacrifice in terms of not just, great personal sacrifice, but sacrificing that which we knew.
Mm, interesting. Yeah, I mean, it is a very what's the word? It's a very loaded word.
Oh, it's very spicy, yeah.
Right. It is one of the like there is a lot of connotation that comes with the word sacrifice and a lot of
Yes.
judgment that comes
Yeah.
with sacrifice. And so I'm curious what your personal experience is with sacrifice. Like if you were to kind of provide an anecdote that explains what it is from your personal life, I'm
Oh,
curious
geez.
what
Yeah.
that might be.
So I when I was a kid, my family was not wealthy, but we were doing okay.
Yeah.
And through a series of unfortunate events that happened to my family, we lost everything,
Ooh.
literally everything, And when I was 10 or 11, yeah, 10 or 11, I remember, bailiff showing up to my childhood home to evict myself, my mother, my brother, my dad wasn't around at the time, but I remember that very vividly. And I remember every year up until genuinely really quite recently,
Yeah.
seeing my mother, my mom, really, really work and really sacrifice everything she had for my brother and I, just to keep us in a
Mm,
place to live, food on the table, that sort of thing. And it's been really, really wonderful to see. I don't want to say sacrifice pays off because I don't necessarily believe in the concept of karma,
yeah.
but
Yeah.
it really goes to show how much sacrifice truly, I think, comes from love.
Mm, yeah. I think it definitely can, right? I'm like, as I think about it, I feel myself wanting to push back even on that around,
Sure.
and I think that's indicative of how loaded the word is, right?
Exactly.
And it's interesting because I think that there are certain types of sacrifice that are really beautiful and generous, and then there are
Mhm.
types that are really not.
No,
Um,
you're absolutely, it can come from a place of being very,
yeah.
um, very self-preservational.
Mm,
That's
yeah.
for sure a thing that can happen. But I think the root of sacrifice coming from, giving something of ourselves
Yeah.
to for the betterment of, the people around us, I think is really, it's so funny. Last night, just on a whim, I was scrolling through Tubi. My partner and I were scrolling through Tubi and trying to find something to watch. And I came across Man of La Mancha,
Okay.
which
All
I
right.
have not seen in probably
Either.
23 years.
Yeah, when like I last saw that like in sixth grade.
No, I know, right? And, I think of, I mean, clearly Alonso Quijano was not a well man, but I think of, The Impossible Dream, the song from the show, which is purely about the idealism of sacrificing oneself for the betterment of
Yeah.
the world at large on one's own quest.
Yeah. Yeah. Yes. It's incredible. And I think that's just it's a really good opener, I think, for us to kind of parse out what it means. And I think um I think what you just gave me some language, I think, that helps me differentiate, which is to say, you're kind of saying when you are giving of yourself, right?
Yes,
You are sacrificing from what you personally have. And I think a lot of times there are people who have power and agency over others, and they choose to sacrifice something that is not just affecting them.
yes,
So it's affecting a group of people, and they're making a decision on behalf of a lot of people who don't have any power and agency.
absolutely,
And that becomes problematic, right?
absolutely. I don't, I don't know that I would call that a sacrifice.
Which is an interesting question, right? It's like,
Yeah,
is right? Am I willing to, you know, I don't know, because oh well, I'm losing something too, but also you're taking something from a lot of people at the same.
proportionally, right? Like if I'm, I don't know, say some greedy ass CEO who, I don't know, has, let's say, $450 million, and I decide that I want to sacrifice an entire, I don't know, career path, maybe two of them, because there's a cheaper option coming along
Yep.
that will save my shareholders literal pennies.
Yeah.
I don't call that a sacrifice.
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting because it's in like, is this an eye of the beholder kind of a situation
Mm,
where who gets to decide what is and what isn't? Um, which is an interesting question. And so rather than solving all of the problems,
Yes, of course.
we've now set a stage for how can this episode help us answer these questions.
Mm-hmm.
And before we dive in, we have to remind our listeners what happened
Ah,
in.
yes.
So, with 30 seconds on the clock, would you like to remind our listeners what happened in the episode?
Oh boy, yeah, I'll give it my best.
Amazing. I am going to put 30 seconds on the clock, and you have three. You will start in three, two, one, go.
Okay, Zubeya is injured from the previous episode. Soren advises plenty of fluids. Okay, the gang goes to meet Archmage Akiyu. They end up with Tidebound Tina. They end up on a fun little quest to try and figure out where Archmage Akiyu is. There's some Kareem stuff. Kareem does something with Kimdale. Oh God. Oh, you know what? I got 8 seconds. Shit. Terry, Claudia keep trying to wake him. Yeah, I tried. It didn't happen. I tried. I got halfway through, maybe.
You know the important things.
I did. Kareem
Yeah,
stuff.
yeah, amazing. Yeah, that was great. Okay. Will you count me in?
Sure, you got it. All right. 3, 2, 1, go.
Okay, so here's the deal. Ezrin is on a first name basis with Domina and then knows what prison looks like, which is super cool. And then Callum wants a shiny Nova Blade for murder from the Star Scraper. And then Zubeya treated by Dr. Soren. And then Ferris hides a purple mark on his neck. And then Kareem wants to steal the Sun Seed from with Kindale. And then the Dragang heads to the Tides and Kiyu. And then Hermit being around. And then Soren doesn't get eaten. And they throw up. And then Terry hides from the Drago. And then Akiyu leads little story time. And then that's my time. Zombeya.
You got there. You got the important one in.
Yeah, there's a lot going on in this one.
So much happens.
Yeah, amazing. Well, if you didn't get it all from there, you can pause the episode and go watch. But that's what you get from us.
Yeah, watch the show. What's your problem? Listening to the thing, not watching the show. Just watch the show.
Yeah. All right, I'm gonna toss it to you first. Like, what is a moment of sacrifice in this episode that you want to turn to?
Yes. So, I mean, the thing I keep coming back to is Zubeya.
Yeah, okay.
Truly, like Zubeya is doing her best to appear strong, even though she has taken a really bad wound. She's been hit hard.
Yeah.
And I see this kind of as the perspective of Zubeya is probably one of the most powerful beings the group has encountered.
Certainly one of, yeah.
Certainly one of. There's certainly quite a few of them, but Zubeya is a 50-foot tall dragon. And on top of that, Zubeya is Zim's mother.
Yeah.
And I feel like, she is, and this might be just me projecting my own shit, but she's protecting projecting, there it is. She's doing her best to maintain this strength, this service to her son and his many friends, even though she is, Zombeya-ing, for lack of better phrasing.
Yeah. 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 So I think what's interesting here is what if for you as you think about this, what is being sacrificed? What is the loss that she is? Does that make sense? Is a question?
Yeah. For me, it's herself.
Okay.
It is one thing to be outwardly giving. It's another thing to be inwardly, right?
Yeah.
And as we see towards the end of the episode, we have these awful, like 28 days later sparks to what's going on. She's not good. She's not doing great.
Yeah.
At all.
Yeah.
And what is sacrifice if not, giving of yourself?
Yeah. So I guess I'm curious, and I agree. I think giving of yourself is certainly a form of sacrifice. I think that it is the sacrifice in the fact that she is withholding that information from the group? Is that the sacrifice, or is the sacrifice that she participated in this battle and got hurt in the first place and is now just enduring the
Yeah.
initial? Yeah, that makes sense. Is a like I
Yeah. I feel it's kind of threefold here.
okay.
And I think those two are part of it for sure. I think withholding the information is a sacrifice because 100% they could be finding someone to treat her, but they have
Okay.
bigger problems.
So,
Or at least in her eyes, they got bigger fish to fry.
so she's prioritizing the goal of the group
The
and
needs of the many,
needs of the many over herself.
the needs of
And
the
so
few.
by not asking for help, she is creating that opportunity to do that and taking that away from herself. Okay. One.
Yes. So that's one. Two, the battle, of course. Like that's huge. Uh and I guess three is kind of part and parcel with two, in that, she still flew everyone
Yep.
to find
Yeah.
Tidebound Tina. They're clearly expecting her to come pick them up.
Yep.
You know, it's it is that service.
Hmm.
You know, it's being in service.
So that begs the question then, is service sacrifice?
Mm. I mean, I think it can be.
Yeah.
I certainly think it can be.
What, and that's the question though. What makes it not versus it is versus it isn't?
Mm.
I don't know. Like it's an interesting question, right? Because
Hmm.
in this case, it feels like being in service of someone else. She already has a great need that she is choosing to choose them over herself for.
Hmm.
Um, and then on top of that, she is choosing to give of her time, energy, capacity, lifespan to in service of other people. And I wonder then, like anytime I am in service of someone else, it feels like one could argue that that is a similar experience. Like if I am going to spend the time, take the time, the energy, the wherewithal to do something in service of you
Hmm.
instead of choosing me, right? Is that then sacrifice in and of itself?
On a smaller scale, I would say sure, absolutely.
Right?
Yeah.
Well,
It's the difference between if I see someone go hungry and I offer them half my sandwich. I'm
yeah,
sacrificing half my sandwich. Cool. That means I have less sandwich, but now they have sandwich.
yeah. And I think the argument for like this is where like how much, right? Is like well, I wasn't hungry anymore. So it wasn't really a sacrifice to me, right? Versus no, I'm still hungry and I'm still choosing to serve this person. Does one have greater merit than the other? Right? And that's another question.
Hmm.
Because I don't know. That's where it starts to get dicey. Um, because like and to whom? And so like again, if I'm full and I have this sandwich, it like of course it will go to waste. Or do I save it for later? This is saving me my dinner money versus this person who is in greater need. And so what happens, I'm worrying, is when we compare service and compare what we have to give, and when it's in direct relation to comparison,
Mm.
right?
Mm, mm, mm.
And so when we start to begin comparing sacrifice, it's like, ooh, that's where I'm like, that feels weird. Um, I
It,
don't
it
know.
it does it does get dicey there. And I mean, I would I would offer then that the diciness comes from the comparison.
Yeah, I agree.
And I think sacrifice ultimately does not invite comparison because I feel sacrifice in its purest form
Mm,
is not done for merit.
mm, yeah.
Like it's not necessarily done for the points you get off of it. It's done because it's the thing that needs to be done.
Yeah. 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 Okay. So I want to compare this to
Please,
Claudia.
yes. Yes,
Uh,
yes.
like, let's talk about sacrifice, right?
Oh boy.
Uh,
Wow.
so like we have Zubea, who is at personal risk with this sacrifice that we're describing here,
Hmm.
in her wound that is clearly becoming more and more infected.
Yeah.
Uh, there is like a metaphorical parallel here with Claudia.
Hmm.
In terms of, Claudia has been for the past several years sacrificing all of her time, energy, life force, and whatever else she's losing through this dark magic experiment to keep Viren alive. And this is a form of sacrifice. And so I guess my question here is, this sacrifice makes me feel all kinds of wary because
As it
it
should.
is done for someone else. But does that person want it?
Viren
Is
very
a question.
clearly doesn't.
That's what I'm saying, right?
Yeah.
And so what does it mean to sacrifice for others when they don't want what you're sacrificing, right?
I
Like,
mean,
that's,
yeah, I would say I feel like, and with all love and respect to Raquel, of course, but
of course.
I feel like Claudia's actions are well intended but very selfish.
Yeah, that's what it feels like. I'm doing this for me
Yeah.
under the guise of doing it for you.
Yeah. And I don't blame her necessarily because she does feel like she's lost a lot,
Yeah.
and she has lost a lot. She's lost a whole lot over the past few years. But, you know, to quote the great sage, killing me won't bring back your honey.
Yeah. Yeah. It's it's wild to me. And I think this is an example of that time where, like, and I think dark magic, frankly, is
Mm,
full of this, where I'm willing to sacrifice things that don't like encumber me. I'm
yeah.
willing to take away these things that other people value
Yeah.
in order to achieve my ends,
Yeah.
right? So sacrificing on my terms someone else's things is, right, is like, that is a form of what I would argue is like abusive. And so I don't know, that's a dark take on dark magic, but
It's not a wrong take though.
yeah, I
I
don't
mean,
think
it is dark magic is inherently exploitative,
yeah, yes,
but is it so different than the exploitation of the rainforest
yeah, I mean,
or the exploitation of
no.
the oceans? I'm certain that's a parallel that the boys would draw.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
It's and we see it in season 3, I think, when Viren sacrifices Sarai's
Mm,
breath.
yeah,
Like,
wild.
wow, in order to cast this spell, which undeniably helps people,
Yep.
but at what cost? But it's not his thing to give up.
Right, that's the thing, is you there is so much online as you read about that moment. There's so much argument around, like, what else would he have done, right? There's so many people who are like, that was the only logical choice, and then there's so many people who are just like, it's really hard to articulate. So I feel like there's a lot of people who say no, but it's just bad.
I
um
mean, ¿por qué no los dos, right? Like,
sí, porque
it makes sense. Logically, yes, it is the only thing he could have done. Reasonably, maybe not quite so cut and dry. But the
yeah.
world is rarely so logical as to have binary choices.
Yeah, like, and like, if I could communicate one thing to the masses of people, it would be to stop thinking in binaries.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
uh
Agreed.
Yeah.
But even with, as the season progresses, and I know, of course, you're going to get to that with future guests, but we see Claudia really sacrifice a lot.
Sure does.
Really, really does.
Yeah.
And I wonder then if the sacrifice that Claudia gives, I mean, clearly she feels it is in the pursuit of a greater good of keeping
Hmm.
Viren alive. But I can't help but wonder what drives that.
Yeah. Yeah. Like, I really want her to sit down with a therapist for a second.
Yeah. Yeah. It's
uh,
true. It's true.
just to
And
think through those things.
Terry, bless his little soul, doing his best to keep things on track.
Yeah. I have to say, one of my intrusive thoughts was, when is Claudia going to sacrifice Terry?
Who knows?
Like, I'm just saying, like, that was like this. I had this thought, like, you offered this lens. I was watching this episode and I was like, oh my God, Terry's being set up for slaughter. Like, that was literally what went through my head. And I was like, oh
Yeah.
my God. Like, they're sitting here kissy kissy right now, but like, I see what's happening. We'll see. I might be wrong, but
Here's what I'd offer kind of in response to that and thought of that. Um, Claudia, we know Claudia will not sacrifice family.
yeah, yeah, yep,
Now, how she views family, who fucking knows? But
yep, yeah,
clearly, I mean, she had a chance to kill Soren, didn't.
yep, yeah. And yet, the
And
thought
yet,
is,
and yet, it's the thought is there. The thought is there. Can't
yeah.
deny the thoughts.
Well, and it just makes, and I think that's an interesting question too, is that for people who are in our own lives that are making choices and exploiting to achieve an end, if I can come to a conclusion of like, okay, who are you going to exploit next? And like think that, oh my God, they're like if I can make that conclusion about Claudia based off of her actions, right? Whether it's founded or unfounded, if that thought crosses my mind, it's something worth thinking about for the people in our own lives. And I think what happens is these thoughts that come up for us are doing work for us,
Mm,
and they're communicating. And sometimes when we trust ourselves, we don't necessarily believe it verbatim. We don't think, okay, Claudia's actually going to kill Terry,
hmm
but maybe not. But it's one of those things where instead it's like, oh, something's off. And I need to start paying attention more to this feeling that I that is leading me to wonder whether this is going to happen. And
Yes,
I
of course.
and so, like, how do we begin to trust our bodies and trust our, like, the thoughts in our bodies and our feelings and our gut, and begin to not necessarily think, oh, that's verbatim, but think, oh, that's telling me something. I should lean more into what I'm trying to,
Trusting
what
your gut. Yeah.
stuff, you know?
Yeah. I had a thought coalesce while you were saying that I think speaks to the lens that we've chosen of sacrifice.
Mm-hmm.
That I don't think sacrifice I don't think sacrifice requires exploitation.
Okay.
And this kind of speaks back to, kind of what we've been talking about with Claudia. There is an argument to be made, certainly not by me, but perhaps by scholars, that Claudia Claudia attempting to keep Viren alive is an exploitation of Viren and Viren's personhood
Yeah.
for her own goal, for
Mm-hmm.
her to make herself feel better.
Yep. Tracks.
And I would never say that the love between Terry and Claudia isn't real. I think it is. I think
I
it
think
very
that.
much is. I think they get each other and it's cute and I like it.
Yep.
But I also think that there is a level of exploitation, which I know is again a very loaded word.
Mm-hmm.
And I wanna strip away as much of the loadedness as I can here, just to purely like, you're exploiting someone's kindness.
Yep.
You're exploiting someone's willingness to help you. You're
Yeah.
pushing it a little too far.
Yeah.
Because I don't think it's malicious. I truly don't think it's malicious. I think it is purely
Yeah.
the
That's
thing that always demarcates Viren for me, and it's something that Jason says all the time, is that Viren is a man who cannot see the forest for the trees.
yeah. Yeah.
Viren always sees long term. He cannot see what is directly in front of him.
Hmm.
And in that way, Claudia is a lot like her father.
Yeah. I agree. I think it's so interesting too, because like the question of intent is a whole nother matter when it comes to
Mm-hmm.
sacrifice, right? Is like I believe Claudia believes that
Yeah,
she is doing this for her father. She is
absolutely.
doing all of this. She is sacrificing herself, all of this for Viren.
Mm-hmm.
But with this omniscient perspective that we get, we have this inkling that this seems like this is more for her than it is for him.
Yeah. And Viren's made it abundantly clear he just wants to spend his last 30 days
Exactly,
eating
right?
the 5 cakes of Zadia and having a good time with his kid.
Well, and it's just interesting because I think that it's that it's the discernment of figuring out like your intent and your impact on other people, right?
Mm,
And over impact or versus impact rather, is something to consider when you're thinking about who and how and what you're
yeah.
sacrificing. Yeah. Ugh, wild.
Yeah.
Uh,
Truly, truly wild.
the other thing that I think you kind of point to, I think there's two more small points I want to just
Please.
allude
Yes.
to. One is I feel like Kareem is an interesting story here, uh,
Mm-hmm.
and the Sun Seed, right? And wants to use the Sun Seed to bring back Sight to Sol Rigum so that it'll change the whole situation. And it's interesting because the Sun Seed for the Sunfire Elves is really important.
Incredibly so.
It's
Wildly so.
it's like a big
Yeah.
deal.
It
And
is to drop a little bit of deep lore in there. It is the center of the campaign written into Tales of Zadia.
oh, see, that's super deep. Cool. Yeah.
It's very honestly like the Tales of Zadia role playing game is fucking dope, and the story that happens in the campaign written into the book is canon to the story in the show.
Oh, cool.
It's very cool,
Yeah.
or at least it is about canon events in the show.
Yeah. No, that makes sense. So, yeah. So, okay. The idea here, though, being that this is something that one could use sacrifice here, but
Absolutely.
I also think that this is a thing that he is choosing to take and steal and use. He is willing to quote sacrifice it for the good of those same people that also really want it and
Mm-hmm.
want it to be not used for that purpose. Um, and so this is one of those examples we talked about earlier, where when you are sacrificing something that is affecting a great number of people, and you are the
Yes,
sole arbiter of whether what is best for them, um, is really interesting, right?
I think so. I think so. I mean, Kareem is not unjustified in his point.
Yeah, and again, we can argue that the intent is still that he believes that this is the right thing to
Yeah.
do,
He's a
right?
little make Luxaria great again about it, but
But I'm seeing a little bit, right? Like,
it's a little bit there. But at the same time, there is an argument to be made that, as a staunch traditionalist, he sees what's going on with his, with the queen of the Sunfire Elves marrying a human, or at least, being betrothed to a human. And I think it's interesting because it shows that the prejudice that existed in the previous that exists still
yeah. Clear.
in the world of the Dragon Prince has never been purely one-sided.
No, no. Yeah. Again, it's I just when is it going to be simple, right? When easy,
When indeed.
simple, and like fine and dandy, and it's just like it just never is. Oh God.
No. Why would it be? How?
Yeah. Yeah.
But
Why?
no, and there is argument to be made for poor Saul Regum too,
Yeah. Yeah.
Like I think something, and again, this speaks to what I feel is the specialness of the show. There really aren't that many people who are cut and dried bad guys.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Everyone has a purpose, everyone has a reason, and it's no one is cartoonishly evil for the sake of being cartoonishly evil. Exactly. They have their moments, sure, but everything Viren did, he did in service to Catullus and his family.
Yeah.
But it could also be argued that everything Viren did was in service to himself.
Yeah. Exactly.
And that parallel with Claudia, everything she's doing is for the sake of her family.
Yeah.
Is it really, though?
Which again, it just begs the question in what is the ethos that is going to lead us to a path where we can be in, as Martin Luther King would have put it, beloved community, right? Where how do we cultivate a space in which we are in community and we are all loving one another? And what I'm learning and what I'm gathering here from at least a sacrificial point of view is that making a sacrifice unilaterally doesn't seem to lead to good ethical sacrifice, right? I think what we're seeing is that when we are in conversation and working towards a community goal, that's when it seems to have more impact. And so like all of these characters are, and I say all, the dragging in particular, are sacrificing the comfort of their lives and all of the choices they could be making. Like Ezran could be king and just be
Yeah,
eating belly tarts all day long,
he could be
and
doing great.
right. And
Yeah.
instead they're pursuing this mission, right, for the greater good, so to speak. um and I think that sometimes we forget that anytime we make a choice, we are sacrificing what could have been.
Mm-hmm.
And I think often we forget that about people making choices, right? And I wonder if it would help us give people more grace by recognizing that when they choose to do one thing, they have inherently given up the capacity to do something else.
I mean, I think that's one of the most important things about it, There is so much that can be said or done about being giving of oneself.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, everything we do, there's a series of split universes where we made just a different choice and something else happened. I could have been an interior designer. I wouldn't have been good at one. I'm not a good artist
Me
for
either.
con, but I could have been.
Yeah.
I could have continued doing my history degree and ended up a bartender.
History degree. I didn't
I
know
was
you.
history. I had a history thing going on,
Look at that. Yeah.
but every choice, I think, and to speak to what you were saying with regards to communal led choices being the way to go.
Yeah.
Ultimately, I think it is truly about community, and it's about making the choice that's right for the community, not just, a small section of the community or
Yeah.
a small section of people in control. And we see it even with organizations that are rife with corruption.
Yeah.
The Lord knows they're all over the place. But we need to be we need to make the choices.
Yeah.
We need to make the choices, and we can't rely on other people to make choices for us,
Mm.
unfortunately. Because then you get the CEO who scraps an entire series off Disney Plus because they want to save on residuals for writers or whatever.
Yeah. 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 Or rebrand a show after 3 seasons so that you can pay people less.
Yeah, oh, Disney.
Yeah. Here we are. All right. Well, this brings us to a nice stopping point. We're going to take a short break and come on back to you with our sacred practice and gratitude for our final segment. So don't go away and enjoy the musical interlude. All right, everybody, welcome back. Thank you for enjoying that music with us. We had a chance to, take a breather, and we're going to dive into a sacred practice. And this is going to be a new practice for this season. And Jesse has graciously agreed to do it with me. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to explain what it is and how we do it, and then we're going to do it together. How's that sound? Does that sound cool?
Sounds great.
Sounds great. See, listeners, take it from Jesse. Sounds great. Uh, the practice we're going to try today is called florilegia. And in Latin, what that means is a gathering of flowers. And that stems from a history of people, primarily priests and ministers, who read sacred texts. And they are, quote, picking metaphorical flowers from the text in order to form a bouquet of these flowers. And flowers are, of course, beautiful in their own context when they're planted or wild or uh, wherever they're growing and in that way. But when you pick that flower and you bring a bunch of them together, the experience shifts and it changes. And sometimes you see the flowers in a new light and it provides a deeper meaning to the original understanding. And so this is what we're going to attempt to do with this episode of The Dragon Prince. And the way we're going to do it is we're going to pick a flower or sparklet, something that sparkled up from us while we were watching the episode. And we're going to hear the quote that we picked. And then what we're going to do is we're going to treat it as if it were a bouquet and then put them together and see how they smell together and if it changes the meaning at all. So, with that in mind, Jesse, you have brought a sparklet.
I have.
Tell me, what is your sparklet?
My sparklet is from early in the episode, and it is Zubea, who I've been talking about the entire goddamn episode. So here we are.
Yeah.
Saying, I will be fine, sweet human.
Yes. I was watching and I was thinking about, okay, I need to find a line. I need what's sparkling up at me. And I was like, oh, that one's really good. So it definitely is a really pretty flower. There's so much to it. And before you kind of tell me more about why that sparkled up at you, I will share what sparkled up at me. So I picked the line, they have a rich inner life. Um, and this is, of course, Ezrin, who is speaking about this sea cucumber slug thing that
A little
promptly,
dopey face. Yeah.
yeah, promptly gets eaten by a carrion gull. Um, but it's an interesting line that we've both picked. And before we kind of go through and learn why we picked it in particular, what we're going to do is we're going to read them together. and see how that affects us or if it changes the meaning at all for us. Once we go through that, we will pause and then explain why we picked it and see if that illuminates it even further. So I will read them together. They have a rich inner life. I will be fine, sweet human. So, Jesse,
Mm.
when you hear these two lines together, what does it make you think of?
Ooh. I mean, in context of the show or just in general?
Either. Yeah.
Either. Okay.
In any direction you want.
I mean, I think hearing these lines together speaks to the inner richness and beauty within all of us
Yeah.
as people. And also, out of context, our perseverance.
Mm. Mm. Say more. Like, from where's that perseverance coming from in this?
Well, to me, what I'm hearing when I hear they have rich inner life, I will be fine, sweet human, is we are inherently built to survive.
Mm.
We are built to be resilient. If not resilient, at least adaptable. Maybe
Yeah.
a better way to look at it. And how could we be so adaptable? How could we be so resourceful? How could we be so um, driven,
Yeah.
driven to live,
Mm.
if not for allowing ourselves a rich inner life?
Oh man. All right, mic drop. We're no, that's so good. I think that to think that like having a rich inner life is what enables one to say I will be fine,
Yeah,
right? Is that's a really beautiful thought, right? The Yeah, I think that's amazing. And I think about what it means to have like the inner life versus this. What is an inner life versus an outer life of like, and when I think about this slug, it's that they are they're internal, right? They're thinking introspectively. They don't, literally talk, but they just kind of sit there and they're content
they
with
vibe. Yeah,
with their thoughts, right? And I think that that's so interesting, like to be content with one's thoughts is a form of resilience, which is super neat as a phrase. I love that.
it's
Um,
very zen.
yeah, yeah, super zen for sure. So okay, so for me, where my head went was rather than having Ezrin say that first line, I'm having Zubeia say both of them.
Mm,
And so she's speaking to Soren in this moment, and she's talking to him about something. They have a rich inner life. I will be fine, sweet human. And I think about what that could mean, and the fact that there are so many things that are good and beautiful around the world. And I think about how Soren in particular has really struggled with dragons, and not all dragons speak, especially speak often. Like for instance, we learned that Purra does speak in the reflection leading up to the season, but for the longest time, it was like there was almost a dichotomy between arch dragons who speak a lot and then like not arch dragons who don't we don't see speak. Um, and it's interesting because I imagine her talking to Soren about dragons and saying, even though they don't speak, they have a rich inner life.
I
I'll be
like that.
right. I'll be fine. Um, and so like, and it leads me to like we talked about this when you mentioned this, but Soren and Zubeia are becoming fast friends, and it's this interesting relationship that seems to be more on Soren's part around growing more accustomed to being around dragons and seeing them as um sentient beings that are
People, yeah.
yeah that are people exactly. And so yeah, I don't know. I just imagine her saying both of these to him in that way.
I like that. I like
Yeah.
that. That's an interesting reflection.
Well, thank you.
Because I vibe with that because I could see that sense of, I will be fine, experience speaking or connecting with other dragons.
Yeah,
You know, I talk, we can talk, we're friends.
exactly.
Go make
Yeah.
more friends.
Yeah. Well, and it's also like not only that, but it's also this way of saying dragons have a rich inner life. I'll be fine.
Yeah.
Right? Especially in the context of this moment where she is covering up her pain, right?
Yeah.
Right? Where she is literally bleeding.
Yeah.
And uh, you know, listen, dragons are gonna be okay. I'm gonna be okay. Right? And it's a comforting thing that is happening here. I think that it's really beautiful. Yeah.
Hmm.
Okay. So we're gonna revisit now, like why? Why did this sparkle up at you? Why did this line from Zubeya in particular, out of 20 minutes of runtime, you picked this? Like
Yeah.
why this line?
I, you know, I had a couple that I was thinking through, but every line that came back to me was Zubeya as I was thinking about it. And I think part of it is because she has come so far from, the last episode of season 3,
Yeah. From one,
where, she's just queen of the dragons. Cool. We get it. But there's so much more to her. And, you know, maybe this is a result of seeing the Barbie movie recently, but there's something I think that is really beautiful about Zubeya as a mother.
mm,
And
yeah.
Zubeya not only having that instinct to mother Zim, but I mean, she's hiding her injury from Soren, who is her friend, but who is also undeniably tiny little human.
Yeah. Like, oh, little
Is your
baby.
kid's friend. Yeah.
Oh, you sweet human.
Yeah. Yeah. You're hiding your injury from fucking Mark, who's in your kid's Spanish class. Like,
No.
there is that to bring it all back round, that lens of sacrifice. There
Yeah.
is that sense of, I am making sure that you think I'm okay,
Mm,
because otherwise you're going to worry and you're not going to be able to pay attention to the shit that actually needs attention paid to it right now.
yeah,
Which, to be fair, Zubeya definitely needs attention paid to her right now.
for sure.
1000%.
Yeah.
And, you know, there is an argument to be made that she should be prioritizing her own health and she
Mhm.
should be prioritizing her own safety. What is it they say? Pull the plank out of your own eye before you take the splinter out of your brother's.
Oh, I've never heard that before.
Wilded, yeah, I know, crazy, right? But it speaks to her. It speaks to her motivations, and it speaks to her overall character, that she would prioritize the health and safety of the world, the realm,
Yeah,
over her own.
yeah. Worthy of sparkles, that's for
Worthy of
sure.
sparkles.
Yeah. Okay.
And
So me now.
you
Um,
know,
yeah, I think about like how Ezrin's an interesting character for me because in a way, I think the critique of, if we meta a little bit, the critique of Ezrin, I think, is often like, one, he's so young, and how is he so young and so wise, and also like so empathetic and so good. It seems a little bit to like quote Mary Sue like
mm,
situation, or Pollyanna, or and the I think we forget that Ezrin is constantly hearing the thoughts of animals.
yeah,
That he can have full conversations with animals, that he is in dialogue with twice as many things as any human
at all
is.
times, and he can
Yeah.
hear it too.
And so like it makes sense to me that he is so caring because sees creation differently
Yeah.
than people do. And the fact that when they have a rich inner life is he is communicating to his friends that this slug, right, is beautiful, is more than what it appears. And that I love it. It's so like, and I think that it just speaks to why Ezran is the way it is, why he is the way he is, rather. Um, so yeah, I mean, it sparkled up at me because of that. I think it's a beautiful line.
I like that. I like that. It does speak to the concept, and I'm glad you said it, that Ezran, I mean, of everybody in the show, I think Ezran has probably the richest inner life.
I think that's fair. I think that's true.
Because it's, I would compare it to walking around a foreign country and not knowing the language. You know, if
Yeah.
you're with your travel companions, everybody speaks English, say, you're going to understand what they're saying. Everyone around you, it's going to be white noise. You
Yep.
might pick up a word here or there that you've picked up on Duolingo or whatever, not sponsored. Um, but you have no idea what's happening in the world around you.
Mhm.
Versus if you were to go to, say, Italy, and you speak Italian and you speak English,
Yeah. It's gonna
then it's
be
completely different understanding. You have an understanding of the world around you. You may not understand the customs yet, but
hmm.
you will understand the words. You will understand when someone says, oh, watch out, there's a truck coming or something.
Yeah. Yeah.
You'll be able to pick that up. And that's the state that Ezran constantly lives in. He speaks every language.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and it's interesting. We talk about dehumanization, and
Mm,
I think that's a too narrow a term here because it's not dehumanization, it's the depersonhoodization of, right? Because
of the animal kingdom, yeah.
and so Ezran sees animals as people,
Yeah.
and that's what separates him from Claudia, right? Is
Yeah.
Claudia sees them as animals,
Tools. Yeah.
are as tools, right? And yeah, I wonder what it would be like if more people saw the world the way Ezra did.
Hmm. It'd be very interesting.
Yeah. Oh wow. Well, there are lots of ways to do Florilegia, and there are lots of ways to continue the practice. For instance, you could rearrange the bouquet and put them in a different order. A lot of times people will have do this with a group of people and have 3 or 4 or 5 people that bring a quote, and all of a sudden it creates like almost a miniature poem that you can
Yeah,
read.
like a word poem. Interesting.
So there's lots of ways to do this. And so if this is a practice that strikes you at home while you're listening, feel free to adapt it to your liking. And if you search for it on Google, you'll find a lot of information about it. So enjoy if that was interesting or fun for you. Which brings us to our final practice, which is gratitude. Um, Jesse, who's a character you're grateful for in this episode?
I don't want to say Zubeya. I've talked about Zubeya enough.
Like,
Um,
you may
it's
stand
so it's
here.
so easy. I'm good. Terry.
Yeah. Okay. Tell me why.
Terry. Well, I've spoken very little about Terry this episode because Terry is just a sweet bean that needs to be protected at all costs.
Yeah, a little cinnamon roll.
He has like, and the thing that always strikes me about Terry, and this speaks to the authenticity and honesty that Ben brings to the role, because
Yeah.
I truly love him. I think his work is outstanding. Um, the thing that always strikes me about Terry is always trying his best.
Yeah.
Terry's always trying his best, and he's always trying to make things okay for everybody. And I mean, what has Terry given up to be where he is now?
That's what I was just about to ask. Like what is he sacrificing to be here?
Who knows? Who
Yeah.
knows? But it must be a lot.
Yeah.
His comfort, his own personal sanity. Who knows? We do crazy things when we're in love.
That's for sure.
And I think Terry is the rock holding that team together.
Agreed.
at
For
least that team sanity together.
yeah, I don't know. I couldn't imagine what would be different if Terry wasn't there, right? It would
No,
be I, mm.
different show,
Yeah,
completely different show.
yeah, exactly.
But yeah, Terry's my gratitude here, because it's he provides such an important and valuable, I don't want to say service, perspective
Yeah,
to Claudia and to Viren, and especially to Claudia in terms of keeping her humanity.
just a little tushy dance.
Little dance, little fun dance. Talk to the bees.
Yeah. Oh, so good. I love it. Wow. Okay.
And for
So
yourself.
for myself, I'm like this is an interesting one because like I want to say Ezrin, um, and in a similar vein, I'm like I talked about Ezrin already. Um, so what's interesting, like I am going to talk through this and help me understand why I'm grateful here.
Mhm.
So Tidebound Tina, Archmage Akiyu is an interesting character.
Very
Uh,
much.
and what's really fascinating about this is, to me, it felt like the murder plot to take down the Dragang um, felt a little half-assed, if I
Mm.
do say so myself. Um, like it it did not seem like she was trying very hard to kill them.
Mhm.
And then post that, she does her best to like fake her own death to get them to leave. And it seems like she's trying all of these avenues. But the part I think that is most like why I'm hinging on this is that as soon as she hears Ezrin, who immediately pours, why would you do that? We're just trying to save the world from these people who already found the location. And she just snaps out of it and says, what? And she just understands the gravity of the situation.
Yeah.
And she listens to this 14-year-old. And I think that so often adults fail to listen to young people. Um, and I think that she did her best to try and kill them moments before,
Yeah.
which I argue I don't think was her best work.
No,
Um,
she could have done much, much more.
yeah, I feel
She's
like
an
she
archmage.
exactly right. Like, listen, I'm just saying this. There's a whole other episode around like why did she half-ass this? But I digress. Anyway, I think listening to kids is one of the greatest things we can do. And so that is, I think, why I will be grateful for the Archmage.
I like that. I like that a lot. That it's a lesson that I've thought about a lot, because I used to teach kids,
Yeah.
when
Yeah.
I was teaching capoeira, and even when I was teaching our niece in my, 20s and my early to late 20s, I was doing a lot of teaching, and I was a very different person then than I am now. I was a lot more, I mean, who wasn't really,
Yeah.
but I was a lot more hard-assed in my teaching. I was a lot more militant in my teaching. And I've come to realize, like, what's the point?
What is the point? Indeed.
What's the point? You know, People need to feel, children especially need to feel inspired. They need to feel uh wanted,
Mm,
valued.
yes. Preach. Keep going.
And and I think it is truly a failure of modern traditionalist practice that so much of it stems around children being seen and not heard.
Yeah. Yep. Here, here. I agree.
Even though Ezrin's 14,
Yeah.
clearly Ezrin's opinion matters a lot. He's the king.
He is a king. Yeah.
He's a king.
Yeah.
And
This
even
is
if he wasn't a king, he talks to animals. And even if he didn't speak to animals, he's still a guy.
still a wildly powerful group of young people here.
It's kind of nuts, yeah.
Yeah. But yes. Okay. That brings us to the end of the episode. We have done it again.
Here we are.
We're becoming pros at this. Uh, If you want to be found by any of our listeners, how would you like them to find you?
For sure. I'm on all the socials at Jay Inocalla. I have basically abandoned my Twitter at this point
Yeah,
because boy, I don't want to give that guy money. That guy sucks.
yeah, here. I
But
get it.
I'm on Blue Sky. I'm on Instagram, of course. I have a Cameo now, so if you want to get me to do video shout outs for you, you can do that. I think it's just Jay Inocalla as well. And I don't know, check out my adventures with Superman. It's dope. I had such a great time being
Really
a part of
good.
it.
I'm impressed. Yeah.
Um, Sorry,
I'm wary of most Superman things that come out, like
that's
because there
fair.
are a lot of bad Superman
It's
things. But
true.
I was like, wow, this is really good.
It's genuinely really good. I know. I am so superhero fatigued,
Yeah,
and my adventures with Superman hits different.
it does.
It
I,
genuinely hits different. It doesn't hit different like The Boys or Invincible, which both also hit different, but
yeah.
it's very fun, it's very sweet, it still hits hard. And I like to describe the Brain as Superman's gay uncle. So that's fun for me.
That's so good.
He's like the grumpy gay uncle, and Mala
Yeah,
is like the loving gay uncle.
that's right. Yep. I love it. Amazing. Well, Jesse, thank you so much. This has been an incredible episode. I am looking forward to hearing back from all of our listeners, especially from our Patreon supporters. We have a little thread going on Instagram where we all chit chat about random things
Ooh.
up, and I am excited. Also, we have live episodes monthly on our Patreon, BNB_pod, where you can have live conversations with me and some patrons. And also lots of other cool things that you can enjoy there.
Oh yeah. Sub
So
up on that Patreon, gang.
yeah, you heard it from Jesse.
Do it. Why not?
That's right. Do that and then go get a cameo, and we'll all be square. All right, y'all. Thanks so much for listening. This has been another episode of Bending Not Breaking and the Dragon Pod. Until next time, be well.